here, so everybody's time is precious, and,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get the high sign that we're being recorded. So, I do.
Yeah, do you want me to do it? Okay.
be all set. Okay, yeah, but I'll just, you guys do your thing and then let me know and
Okay,
I'll be here.
okay.
I'll just be ready with my little trusty PowerPoint.
Well, I'll just say a few words. This isn't intended, I mean, this is a joint select board budget committee gathering, workshop to work through. Tonight's really just sort of an opening. I think John will spend most of the time sort of telling us about the budget and what's in there. I did want to start with a statement, really to recap how we got here, why we're here. So last August, we started a new budget process with good intentions and hope that the Select Board and Budget Committee could work together on finding ways to reduce the rate of budget increases to our taxpayers. During last year's budget process, several key areas were identified for further analysis and consideration to reduce the next year's budget. We've all worked hard since then to explore areas of savings for this next year, and thank you to everyone here who has done the hard work. Because some of the big increases we've seen over the past several years were attributable to prior voter-approved decisions, such as building the West Rockport Fire Station, adding full-time firefighters, and investing in our own EMS service, not to mention an inflation rate of 23% over these past 5 years. We expected this year's budget to have a lower rate of increase than our more recent prior years. Early in the new process, the Budget Committee voted for a goal of a 1% budget increase for this next year's budget. While this seemed daunting, given an increase in health insurance of 9%, inflation of 2.8%, and cost of living adjustments for all employees of 2.8%, the department heads and town manager worked extremely hard and seriously to develop this budget that exceeds the Budget Committee goal of 1%, a net increase of 0.74%. Included in this proposed budget are savings realized from the health insurance task force that we all agreed should be done, since last year's budget process highlighted that category as a particular cost concern. Thanks to town staff time in analyzing and preparing for the work of the task force and Walker's background and experience, we not only have immediate savings from that process, but have a plan for further savings. The budget also proposes in-house mowing using seasonal staff, another area of cost concern from last year. While we'll spend the next month looking for additional savings, I think it's important to recognize the significant work that went into this achievement, all working together to find the most cost-effective way of providing the services that our residents expect and that our voters have voted for and supported. We should celebrate this. While I believe strongly in the ability of the Select Board and Budget Committee to work together on this year's budget to come up with good common sense budget solutions that will benefit our residents and taxpayers, I have to say I was disappointed to see that one member of the Budget Committee, prior to any Budget Committee meetings on the proposed budget, likely without discussing it with any of his fellow members, felt the need to give the public his personal opinion on the proposed budget. For that's what it is. It's a personal opinion, not a considered opinion after going through the budget process.
Was there any statement in there that said that this was, you're talking about me, you might as well just say it, Denise. So was there did I say anything in that letter to the paper, which I have every right to write, saying that it was on the part of the Budget Committee? Was that in there any place where I said, this is what the Budget Committee thinks?
You said you were a member of the Budget Committee.
Am I?
Not in that role. In that role, you are a private citizen deciding. So this is important for all of us, I think, to understand. And yet, rather than letting the readers know that it was his personal opinion, he attempted to cloak it as a Budget Committee member opinion by signing the letter as a member of the Budget Committee. Yet the voters have entrusted each of us who hold elected positions to do a job during this process. That job is to work together and develop the best budget possible for our taxpayers and residents. During this process, the Budget Committee may make recommendations to the Select Board for changes to this budget that the Select Board will carefully consider. Indeed, we hope that any Budget Committee member who is inclined to vote down the budget as a whole will have provided specific recommendations that would allow that member to support the budget. In contrast to years past, this process would ensure that the voters can understand why an individual Budget Committee member may have chosen to recommend a no vote on the budget. In addition, each Budget Committee member will vote on the budget as a whole and whether to recommend it for support to the voters. That recommendation should not be a budget committee member's personal opinion about the budget. That personal opinion belongs in the voting booth when the budget committee member casts his or her own vote. On the Budget Committee and Select Board, our job is to set aside our personal opinions and provide recommendations to the voters based on our full understanding of the budget and whether the budget at the end of this process is the best budget achievable under the circumstances and serves the taxpayers and residents well. Are we making good short-term and long-term decisions for the benefit of Rockport and its residents? It's a serious role the voters have entrusted us with. I look forward to working with all of you on this over the next month. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry that that happened.
Not a good way to get started. Not a good way to get started.
Not a good way to get started, but a decision that was made this weekend to submit that letter.
I haven't seen the letter. Where did the letter come?
And Penn Bay Pilot,
I just got home today.
yeah.
Just got home today from being in Atlanta, so I've not seen it. But
Yeah.
just what a poor way to get the meeting started.
Well, I'm sorry he felt like he had to walk out. I mean, I think when he sent that letter to the Penn Bay Pilot, you know, obviously he has many titles, and he chose to use the title of member of the Budget Committee. And
It was
this,
absolutely necessary to have your comments tonight, that's all I'm saying.
I think it is important. I think it set us off on the wrong tone to have this letter appear within 36 hours of the budget being released. And without, I don't know if any of you were consulted by Steve?
No, I similarly had the same impression when I read the article over the weekend. And I'd like to make a comment about it because the title of it was Rockport's proposed budget is out. Did they hear us? Us. Well, kind of. That was the title, okay? Now, I don't know who us is, but when you sign a letter as a member of the Budget Committee, and I'm sorry he's not here, but when you sign a letter to the Penn Bay Pilot as a member of the Budget Committee and the title includes the word us, that implies, you could easily interpret that it includes the Budget Committee as a whole. I wasn't consulted on that letter. I don't know anybody else was, but I certainly wasn't. So I take exception to the implication that perhaps I was. I wasn't a member of that, you know, I didn't participate in that letter.
But you could say us was us, budget committee, or you could say us, residents.
You
Easily.
could, but he didn't. And
easily.
unfortunately, he signed it as Rockport Budget Committee member. And that's not cool, okay? It's okay that he writes a letter, not a problem. Absolutely, 100% is right, totally. Leave the Budget Committee out of it, because we didn't vote on it, okay?
I think when he says us, though, my perspective when I read it, resident, 100%. I'm
Understand.
like 100% resident.
Yeah,
So that's my viewpoint.
That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying, these upcoming meetings that we're gonna be having are intended as a free-flowing discussion of the proposed budget for next year. That's it. And I haven't prejudged the outcome. The letter implies that the staff who authored, that letter had, also they didn't listen. Remember it says, the beginning of it says, did they hear us? Well, kind of. That's a snarky comment, okay? You all, the town staff, they worked hard to pull this thing together. They really did. And we owe them, to listen and evaluate what they've come up with. There's a old management adage that says, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And we don't need a prejudgment letter coming out the previous weekend from the author, from a member of the Budget Committee as identified, talking about us. And again, I get your point. Suggesting that some or all have already prejudged this process. That's not right. It's not fair. It's not fair to the hard work that Megan and John and the crew put this thing together. So we owe it to them to listen with an open mind and then make our own judgments, ask our own questions. That's the point of all this. But we can't walk into it as if it's an us-them kind of thing. It doesn't work. And, that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Historically, in any letter that a board member would write to the press and what have you, always starts with, my name is XX, and the following is my own personal opinion, it does not reflect. And the only people that get to say the board reflects is the chair of the board. But even if, and I can certainly see the argument, or the presumption that the our, or the us, was the town of Rockport. But even then, he can't be talking about them. I mean, he didn't go around, he didn't have a vote that, went to say so-and-so. And quite frankly, I hope he comes back, because he has certainly a lot of energy, and one could say that a budget sitting in front of us that's 0.75% in growth is a direct result of his energy. I probably, on this board, possibly represent the other extreme. I'm going to sit here and give my perspective when it's appropriate. And then in the end, knowing full well that somewhere in the middle is where we'll end up. One side of the middle or the other. But I'm disappointed that Mr. Bowen stepped out for this particular meeting, and hope to see him back again.
Yep, and I apologize if people took it wrongly, but I felt like on behalf of the town manager and the staff who have worked so hard on this budget, that something needed to be said about the letter, but obviously it wasn't. Well, anyway, I apologize if that is, and I'll reach out to Steve to see if there's anything that could be done, but it felt like to have something come so quickly after the budget went out needed to be addressed. So we'll work on it with Steve and hope we can get him to come back.
Yeah, and I would just chime in that this was not the budget. This is a draft. This is a work in progress. And I think that's where this completely crossed the line, because it was like, wow, you haven't even, the first glance at the first draft, and we all know that this gets worked on and worked on and worked on in the next few weeks and months. And then it's the budget. So it is important to know that this is a fluid document right now. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
So hopefully, rather than any one person or group of people feeling put upon by this discussion, hopefully this is just the rules of the road as we navigate our river. So that's, the last 5 minutes has been a discussion about how each of us should handle ourselves.
Well, and this has come up before, and we thought we had an understanding that if someone was going to be publishing a letter using the budget committee, that would have been a voted on letter by the budget committee. And I appreciate any one of us can write whatever letter to the editor we want to write on whatever subject. But as Jeff said, we can either be very overt and say it's our personal opinion, or at least not try to bring in whatever roles we're playing within the town to somehow give it a higher importance than it might if it just came under our own name. But I think this is something that we've been dealing with throughout this process, and it's important that all our committees sort of honor the significant role you play as committee members, and that you act as a group, not as an individual. So. Yeah,
jump
you want
in?
to go? Let's launch into it then.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. Great attendance. I hope I have Steve's book here, so if Steve Smith is able to, if you're watching, Steve, I've got your book, so come see me. We are, I want to pivot to somewhat really, I think John kind of said it. This is day one, page one. That's where we are right now. This is the start of something, not the end. It's the end of one chapter, but it really is the start of the next chapter of what this is. And it's really putting into the hands of the elected officials your opportunity to make this what it needs to be. We propose, but you all are here to make the changes and have the conversation and make the decisions about where this budget goes from here, okay? I don't want to get into the prior discussion. That's a political discussion. That's not one that I'm here to do. I'm here to present a budget and to let this process jump off from here. But what I look at this process is very much is a role of 14 people 9 members of a budget committee, 5 members of a select board, 4 in this case, who are working together, particularly through the next 4 meetings after tonight, to look at each individual department, look at individual budget lines, ask questions, get more information, digest, make decisions, and start to take this project into something that becomes the form that ultimately the voters will decide upon in June. That's really what we're talking about here. And while I thank you, Denise, it has been a lot of work, and we've worked very hard, and we've listened very carefully to what has happened. We've worked with many of you. We've heard from residents, we've heard from department heads, we've heard from everybody who can possibly think about this budget. There's been more input into this budget than there has been in any other budget that I've worked in 20 years of doing this, okay? We have done a lot to try to take what we've heard, what we felt, starting from a year ago, when 14 members, 5 select board, 9 budget committees sat around this table and provide feedback. So this budget started a year ago. And as you all know, there's been a lot of discussion about budgets, about outcomes, about what can accomplish, what can't be accomplished. And this is the output of that. So I'm gonna go through that a little bit briefly, because I think, Denise covered some of those things. But I also wanna just reiterate, this is a process that takes a year to turn around. We are turning an aircraft carrier when we do a municipal budget. And it's not something that happens quickly or easily. So this is the process that we're gonna run through tonight, recommendations, the select board goals that came in July, budget committee recommendations, the benefits task force that met, some overall budget highlights, highlights of substantially changed departments, and then some closing remarks. And then there's some discussion that I think the 2 groups need to have about the process and where we go forward. Okay, so let's start on last year, a year ago. We had some feedback about mowing expenses and some real concerns about the high cost of mowing expenses. In this budget, we have incorporated a solution to mowing expenses. It's not the solution, but is a solution. When we talk about that, certainly we'll have greater feedback and so forth. But this budget includes the bringing in and hiring staff on a part-time basis to do mowing. It's not a full year, so it's a little bit of a difficult conversation because it's the end of one contract that would still have to be within this budget. But by and large, that's within this, and that has been looked at. The employee benefits valuation, again, at that point and where we were a year ago, it was, we need to look into this and we need to spend some time on this. And we'll talk about, again, this we'll go into more detail. Evaluate town engineering, wastewater operations, and management agreement. There was a lot of discussion about percentages of how much of this budget should be supported by the wastewater budget, and would we have the adequate support for all of the various projects we have. That's within this budget. And then cemeteries, there was a great deal of discussion about cemeteries, lot prices, resident, non-resident, and we sort of ran the gamut through this process a year ago. That's within this budget. So the select board then met in July and August, again, kind of distilling some of those thoughts and move that into a couple of key areas. They wanted to see some changes to the budget process. We'll talk about, we did some work on that. We've created the benefits ad hoc committee or task force. Again, that's gonna be forthcoming. There was changes to the capital plan. That was a completely new document and a new process, and many of you, if not, I think all of you actually, were part of that meeting in this room in October. Improvement of goals and metrics within the budget document. A lot of time was spent in trying to improve that front page to represent what we're trying to accomplish each department on a yearly basis and trying to reflect that in some of those indicators. We had an EMS evaluation in the beginning of October, and again, many of you were part of that meeting, where we took that look of a 6-month look back of where EMS is, where is it succeeding, where do we need to improve, and again, we had that conversation. We had the building assessment project. Most of that is complete. Some of that was incorporated into the capital plan. There's still feedback, there's still information I'm getting. Just received mechanical engineering report on this building a week ago. Also a week ago received some further work on structural engineering. More investigations needed on that. It's not complete, but it's still in process. And then we have the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee. That's a group that has been underway. They are diligent in their work. And again, that's a task force that's ongoing, but their priorities also feed into what we're talking about in this budget process. So in the fall, I guess there was, August was, I think, was the first meeting of the Budget Committee, and then it rolled through, obviously, nearly monthly meetings up until last month. Now, I want to just quickly note, I need to get a better handle of where the minutes are, because I don't think a lot of them ended up back with Diane. So if any of you have copies of those minutes, we need to make sure we get those on the website, because they're currently not on there. And I want to make sure we have everything. We have the agendas, and agendas are great, but there are no minutes. So if, I'm just sort of saying this now, but if anyone has a quick, has them by hand and just wants to fire them off via email, that'd be great. We do have yours, Bill, though, from last meeting. Thank you very much for that. So, very appreciative. But some of the stuff from the fall we're missing. So, not a problem. We're gonna keep rolling. So, my apologies if I've not properly reflected what the recommendations were, but I'm gonna this is sort of the summaries here. The committee set a budget target, and I've heard this described many different ways. It's a target, it's a goal, but 1% was the thing that stood out in that. And so that was something that was important. It was something that seemed hard to really shoot for, but it's something that we were going to shoot for. And that was a vote in early fall. And then subsequently, and again, I didn't have the dates on this, the committee made a request to the select board for an overall recommendation statement on the warrant, sort of just that bottom line statement of up or down of how the budget committee feels on the budget. And then there were proposed charter amendments that were given to the select board to consider. Those two are not something I'm going to accomplish here. That's, I think, more of a conversation for the two groups to discuss after I get through this. But these were the recommendations as I understood them. So, okay, so.
John,
Yeah,
can you just pause to make sure we
Sure.
haven't missed anything? That
yeah,
Anybody
that'd be
feels
great.
that we missed?
Thank you.
Anybody on the
And I was
budget
just,
committee?
did the select board vote on our request? As far as, we did have a vote?
Didn't
Up or
vote,
down
but-
vote, yeah,
Well,
we agreed to it.
we agreed to it.
So that in the annual report, there will be specifically information again from the budget committee.
In the town warrant.
The town warrant, yeah,
A
yeah.
vote up or down on the warrant, but glad you brought that up, because there's been great confusion over what was actually on the warrant. So if anybody wants to look, I've got the last 10 years' worth of town warrants right here printed. And the budget committee actually, as far back as I can tell, has almost always had a yes, no on the budget. That was it until about 2 or 3 years ago, when suddenly it started having a little animated, the budget committee wants to recommend it to the select board to change this or not change this. And the up or down vote kind of disappeared for 2 years, 3 years?
3 years.
3 years. But it was great confusion over that, and I went back and actually pulled them all out one by one, and nowhere in there was there anything more than up or down vote. So just to clarify that. I think it would be really useful, though, to have more information if the budget committee does end up with a negative vote, votes against it over by the majority. I would love to see information available on the website of why they made that decision before the town vote. So I think just generally, we're looking for transparency, we're looking for information. When I look at those old town warrants, I'm like, what do you get out of that when there's just we don't like the budget or we do like the budget? So I think it would really be helpful for the voters in this town to really hear if there are split votes or there is some dissension, why is that there?
And you said you, John, how's the rest of the select board feel about that?
You mean if there's a
If
split
they're,
with the
no,
select
if, no,
board?
if they agree with you.
Well, I don't know. I'm offering my
Okay.
my thoughts.
I didn't know if you,
I would assume,
I think we've wanted that from the beginning. is
yeah, I
understand.
don't see why we wouldn't want that, so I
Right.
guess I just, you know, I think,
that's
I
the
think it's
last,
just a question of what the lawyers say we can put on the warrant.
well, I'm not saying on the warrant now.
Okay,
Because we've never had that on the warrant.
yeah,
You know, there was a discussion about wanting to have, you know, a lot of narrative in addition to the up or down vote, which is really impractical, frankly, and we'd have to have the town lawyer involved, and we'd be parsing over, well, do you get 25 words, do you get 50 words? We have the ability these days to store a lot of information for the public in various places. It's very easy to create a page on the website where, you know, voters, when the early voting starts, have that information up there. You know, if they want to read it, they can, and if they don't want to read it, and they just get into the voting booth and just want to look at the up or down vote, that's fine too. So,
I mean, I happen to,
You could probably carry that over to like the select board too, if you had like a 3-2 vote or 4-1 vote.
Sure.
It'd be great to have a page for the
yeah,
select board
I mean,
member.
all the way across the board, I
mean,
think.
Because it would be nice to know, like, why, if you had 2 people didn't agree with 3 people, well,
So,
why?
right. the
So I
voters-
think,
Yeah, for both parties.
I'm just trying to get general consensus on this, that here's what our ultimate goal is trying to, you know, tell the voters
Tell the reason.
what we know and why we made the decisions we made. We've been elected, we have an obligation to explain ourselves, so that's my position. I can't imagine anybody else on the select board, so I'm kind of already drafting your opinion.
I don't know, yeah,
But-
no, I like the idea.
I mean, I think the town of Rockport residents would love to know why these
Yeah.
votes were, you know, the way they were, so.
And Bill, you didn't see the meeting, we all agreed, I don't think it was an actual formal vote, Denise.
Right, there wasn't any.
We didn't have like a motion or anything. Craig was in the meeting, and I think he was satisfied with what we discussed, and that we all feel that, yes, an up or down vote on the warrant, that's not a problem, so.
This is the last time I'm gonna act as a shill for you, you know that.
Let's say, no, you gave me that great
Open it right
signal.
now.
Yeah.
The CYA contract just ended, huh?
But, by the way, I have to say, I also took the liberty of researching all the town budgets over the last basically 15 years to see what was the page count on the town budgets, because there was a lot of discussion of, this is way too much information. So, you know, Megan and I already chatted about this, so she knows where this is going, but it's been since about 2018 that the budget book was 470 pages long. It ebbs and flows, but actually at one point, it was up to 623 pages. So last year, we were down to 540, which was a reduction of over 100 and some pages. And now we're at what, Megan? 430. So, and of course, if you've gone through the whole book by now, you know that half of it is, you know, kind of the appendix portion, and there's a lot of blank pages in there. So, you know, I think this notion of having, I think it's astounding that those of us who are involved with the budget would say this is too much information. I don't know why that even can be said with a straight face if we're on the budget committee or we're on the select board. So it's just my opinion, so.
Yeah, I think it's only if you can't find the information you really want, because
Yeah,
there's so much
if
other
it's, you're having a hard time finding it, that's one thing, but, you know, or if you'd like information packaged in a different way, I think, okay, that's great. I think Megan's more than open to doing that for us. So, you know, I've got a lot of questions about why we have certain information in there that you're gonna hear me talk about in the next few weeks. And, you know, I think Megan loves that kind of feedback and being able to work on reformatting and, you know, she wasn't interested in like winnowing it down to 20 pages when I asked her about that. All right, that's it. That's my spiel. Thanks, Bill.
Well, since you brought it up, so you will notice that it is the budget book is organized differently than it had been in the past. And part of that was driven by, sorry, I should get closer to the microphone. Part of that is driven by some of these concerns about how do we make it more accessible, right? How do we make it so that, you know, how do we make it so that we can easily reproduce the first 100, 150 pages or so that have the budget information without the appendices? And it was difficult to do that because really, the functional pieces were really right in the middle, right? It was very difficult to somewhat strip that out. So we've reorganized this a little bit, made the appendices to really be appendices, and as still supporting information, still important information that we'll refer to often over the next 4 weeks. But realistically, the heart of this budget is at the front now, and that makes it easier for hopefully all of us to easily access and easily make decisions and call back. So that, again, that's another area where that message was heard, received, and change was implemented. So that's sort of part of the message I'm trying to get across. Nothing to do with, the message I'm trying to get across has nothing to do with what what Steve wrote or anything. My point is that you can't sit in my seat and not hear everything that's said. Okay? You can't sit in my seat and not want to do better for everybody here. I might disagree with individual people, but my job isn't to disagree. My job is to propose and present for you all to make decisions. And it's been a hard year. I'm gonna be honest. It's been a hard year for staff. It's been a hard year for me. And I don't agree that we haven't listened. I think what we're showing here tonight is that we've listened. And I want to continue to listen. I don't care who's who or whatever, but I honestly said last year to you all and everybody who was here in this room, I hopefully can reflect that. If there's an idea to make this thing better, we're gonna search it out. And we did a lot of that work here over the last 12 months. Did everything happen that everyone would like? Probably not. I'm sure that's the case. Nothing goes the way everyone wants. But it's important to me that this process works and that all of us here, every single individual here, has an opportunity to make that change happen. And so this work, and it was frustrating. I'll back up. There's nobody who was more upset than about a 13% increase than me. Nobody. I had a pit in my stomach for 6 weeks before I presented that budget a year ago, because I knew what that meant. Because the neighbors that Craig talks about were going to feel that 13%. My neighbors are going to feel that. People I knew who lived here, grown up here, aren't going to be able to stay here. That hurts. It's not the way I want this to be. We got through that. We talked about it. We hated it. We gritted teeth. More people said yes than no in the polls, and that's the law of the land. But from the moment we presented that budget, we were working to try to get this budget, which is a better budget for Rockport, and a budget that's much more representative of what we want it to be. So absolutely I'm listening. Absolutely the board's listening. Absolutely the budget committee's listening. Not just to yourselves, but to the broader community. We're all hearing this. And we wanted this. We've been working hard on this. Are there things that have slipped because we're focusing on this? Yeah, there are. There are. But this is important, you know? And so when we got to work, and I want to also reiterate this, when we got to the end of last year's budget, I said, next year will not be like this. It's not, and it wasn't necessarily just because we had that feedback. It's because there was so much in last year's budget which were one-time items that were hitting because the voters had approved it, and that's when it fell into the budget. We couldn't take away the fire department that we built. We couldn't take away implementing most of what we had done with EMS. That was what was part of that policy that was approved by the voters. Whether you liked it, you didn't like it, that was the policy. So that's what went into that budget. Now we're in a different budget. Now we've had a chance to look at some things, take some feedback from that process a year ago, take feedback from what we've heard, take direction from the board, and we've been able to put this in a much better place. There are still outside forces working against us, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this was a lot of hands that made this work happen. And, you know, I want to say that because I know we talked about everything else, but it's important to me that you know how much every word, every phrase, every concern, everything that's been said resonates and has gone into trying to make this thing better. So I needed to say that. Sorry if I.
John, I appreciate your comments. I had one question.
Uh-huh.
And it may be because I missed it, but do we actually have a town vote on the EMS, or is it just part of the budget that we approved?
Part of the EMS, part of the budget,
So
right.
it wasn't a specific, again, vote for the town. for
Well,
EMS.
The way I could answer that, Bill, is this. Every budget is a list of priorities of the town. And there are different priorities we all have. Some might value an EMS even higher than what we're doing, some have less. The package is what's proposed, right? And that's what we talked about, is the package of what's proposed to the voters. And so, to me, that policy is set here, right? So the policies of FY '27 are what's decided on between the 14 of you. And that was what was the policy that was set forth. It wasn't a separate vote, you're absolutely right about that. But, just in the same way we're gonna plow a certain way, we're gonna maintain buildings in a certain way. Those are the policies we're all establishing. And that's the way I view that, and there's a list of them.
I understand your feelings. I'm just saying that when we went through the whole sewer issue, that was
Yeah.
an issue for the town.
Mm-hmm.
And we made it a separate issue, and we got everybody to again, come in with their comments and so forth.
Sure.
We never really did that with EMS. It was-
Sure.
I don't know how many people knew that
Yeah.
the item was in the budget, but didn't realize what they were voting for, that big program.
Yeah,
I don't wanna hold this meeting.
Yeah, I know,
for this.
I got you. And I've heard that, I've heard that same concern. And it's a challenge we face. There are more meetings handled on EMS than almost any other issue, other than wastewater in the 5 years I've been here.
Doesn't surprise me.
And nobody either picked up the thread or went with it or whatever. There were special meetings held by the select board. There were, invited in different people from different agencies to have part of that conversation. We did have, more of a crowd than usual, but it's hard to get through the wall of what people are paying attention to. And I would have loved people to pay more attention to it than they did. I think perhaps because on the ballot at the same time was the wastewater conversation. So that was certainly where a lot of attention in Rockport was,
I don't wanna
all
delay
that.
this meeting 'cause we'll be here
But it's an
for hours.
important,
Yep.
I think it's an important piece that you're bringing up, Bill, because it is, people want to know, like, hey, I want to vote on this issue or that issue. And this is a list of a whole bunch of issues, this budget, all these budgets. And so you guys setting that policy here and now is really why it's so important. And, as I said, we're at the start of a process, not the end. So we'll get through that, whatever it looks like at the end, that's what the voters will go through. Okay.
Bill, do you think
Sorry.
that observation is important enough to look at the protocol of identifying large projects from here?
Maybe in the future. I mean, we've
Yeah.
had two big projects, the sewer and EMS. We haven't had two like this in many
No.
years.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. We good? I'm gonna roll ahead. I only have 85 slides left to go through. Just kidding. So let's talk about the benefits task force. We had a group, it was consisted of myself, Megan, our finance director, Walker, representing the budget committee, Denise representing the select board, representative of both unions, the library director, and our resident assessor, Carrie, joining the crew. We reviewed existing benefits, and the benefits offered by other municipalities to somewhat weigh where Rockport's benefits compare to our neighbors and really across the state. With data gathered, Megan had gotten some data, Walker had gathered some data, and so it was sort of all in the pot. The group recommended offering incentives to employees to take lower cost health insurance plans to create long-term savings for the municipality. Short-term gains were minimal with these recommendations, but the important piece was of really trying to bend the curve, long-term savings, and trying to potentially, in some cases, use those savings to create even more short-term savings. But really, the idea is to try to bend the curve. And thank you, Walker, Denise, the staff. I think we had a really successful conversation because as we had a conversation last year about this, there's a lot of fear, a lot of concern. Employees are very fearful of benefits, particularly in the environment we're facing now. We had incredible increases in the private market, on the exchanges. 20, 30%. Scary, scary stuff. We even went to the private market to see if the private insurers would come to work for the town. That was really not an option available to us. I know Walker provided a bit more of a longer conversation or report to the budget committee, but I just want to reiterate that now. There was a lot of stones were looked under, and I think we found a good solution that will really bend the curve, and that's really what we were, I think, hoping for. So further, and this is really where the changes came into this budget. Task force recommended altering the strategy for budgeting for health insurance costs for unfilled positions or to those who elect not to take health insurance. Also recommending set up a reserve account to stabilize these costs. So effectively what we were doing prior to this budget that's proposed here is we were budgeting for a family plan for any of those unfilled positions, which of course would be the maximum amount, which potentially the town could bear as a cost, which is smart budgeting in that we certainly don't want to be unable to hire someone because they have a family and they want to take health insurance per policy, as they should. But the difficulty was by budgeting that way, and not everyone choosing to take the most expensive, we were budgeting more than we were spending. So our actual costs were far less than what we were budgeting. And so we adjusted that strategy in this budget, and so there's a great deal of savings there within this budget as well. Okay? We put some step increase changes that will soon go into policy, but these changes are incorporated in this budget. But these step increases would change so that the steps mirror the CBA for the police union and would be a 3% change as opposed to the 5% that are currently in policy. So those were all recommendations that the group agreed to and have been incorporated into this document. Okay, I want to talk about the overall budget. So overall, this is a 0.74% net increase, or a $63,012 increase over last year. Okay, that's a net number, and it doesn't take someone to be on the budget committee to know that that's less than 1%, and we're very excited about that. I got to be honest with you. If this was 1.2 or 1.5, I would go with 1.2 or 1.5 and say we're pretty close. It came to a 0.74 because it came to 7.74, and a great deal of credit goes to our department heads. Bill rightly asked the question of me in that meeting when we were here in January. What's the message? And do they get the message? They got the message. This is very little. You'll see as you go through and look at the two lines of department head and town manager. There's very little change. And that's largely because our department heads understood. Now, did we meet? Did we talk about what there was in their proposal and maybe sometimes come to agreement? Sure. But they got the message and they too were listening. So to move the next line down, of that net increase, it's a 0.3% expenditure increase, or $32,860. It's a revenue decrease of 0.7%. Which is $30,152. So of course you put them together, you've got the net number. So how do we get there? And what does it mean? Well, there's minimal to no impact to town services as currently delivered. Okay, we talk about the policy. To me, the policy of how we work and how we operate is, unless those are changed by policy or other directive, they largely stay unchanged. And so can we work within that overall policy to make sure we can still do what people are expecting, but can we do it for less? And that's really what we're looking at. This budget maintains investment in infrastructure and helps towards long-term financial goals. We didn't cut every reserve. We didn't strip paving, but we maintain investments in our buildings, our roads, and our infrastructure. Is it enough? Does it bend the curve? On that side, does it address the issues raised in the capital plan? Not nearly enough. And we talked at the end of that meeting of some real challenges we face. But in terms of what's on our plate now, yes, it does. And lastly, and I think most importantly, there's no gimmicks here. There's no hidden maneuvers, no shifting burden to future taxpayers. We're not playing a shell game here. This is an honest budget. We're not trying to cut something that some year that's gonna come back, and we don't do that. I don't do that. I don't like doing that. This is an honest budget. And again, it came from honest work from a lot of different people, many of you, all of you in this room, department heads and beyond. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Do we use, when you say the revenue decrease,
Yep.
do we use any of the reserve funds in your budget?
Some?
I thought it was like 300,000, if I remember.
Oh, yeah, unassigned fund balance? Yes, 320,000. In last year's budget was 420,000.
So we're still using, okay.
We're using some, but we're using less, yeah.
And part of that's mandated by law, is that not right? Do I have that right?
It's not, no, there's no mandate. There are auditor recommendations and maybe municipal recommendations of what percentage of our commitment we need to keep and largely keep as cash flow. And really, our cash flow basis is what drives a lot of this conversation. But, you know, there's no law that I know of. There's no
No, I
statute.
must be thinking of
Yeah.
something else.
Okay. One thing I wanted to outline, these are a couple of charts that Megan and I talked about as we sort of got towards the end of the process. This is somewhat an important conversation, something that gets somewhat lost in this. So this is our sources of revenue. And obviously, the vast majority, the green, is our property tax revenue, right? That's obviously the majority of what we do. But we're nearly at a 1/3, 2/3 situation when it comes to, actually a little more than 1/3 of non-property tax revenue that is generated to offset our expenditures. So, you know, when we talk about, you know, and this isn't to say that obviously all expenditures are approved by the voters and move forward as such. But when we talk about how we operate, there is a pretty significant share of the town operations that come from its own operations. It might be excise tax revenue, it might be, you know, permitting fees from our planning and community development department. You know, there's a lot of different avenues where those revenues are coming in, and it's not just a question of what we're all paying our property tax. So I think that's an important note for us all to recognize. Obviously, in a way, we all obviously still going through this process, but it's important to know how big a share those other revenues stand in terms of how we operate. Revenue sharing obviously is another major component of our revenue stream.
So is that how, I know the Penn Bay pilot was reporting a $12.7 million budget, and
Yeah.
yet really our net budget is $8.4 million.
Yeah.
Is that this?
Right, the net number, right, what we go to taxpayers and what we're asking our taxpayers is that $8 million number. I did have to, I don't know if anyone caught that article early. I had to send some changes to Linda. Megan caught some too, and they had to update the draft of that, but I think we got them all, I think it's all correct now.
Yeah, she updated.
Yeah, perfect, beautiful. So, anyway, just wanted to talk about that, and I think that's important for us all to recognize. Similarly, or maybe dissimilarly, this chart is really talking about net budget apportionment. And, you know, we had I think at one point in last year's process, I can't remember who it was, someone had said, boy, we spend a lot of time on things that don't, you know, really, in terms of the tax dollar that we pay, or even mill rate impact, are so minimal. And so this chart is really trying to help to drive that point home, is to say, okay, what are the real drivers here of what are making all of us pay more or pay less or whatever it might be? And it surprises no one, I'm sure, that Public Works is the top of that list, over $3.2 million in a net number. The police department second, but the police department really beat a third of Public Works. So again, those infrastructure costs are real, and that's, you know, obviously where that comes in. And then, of course, you go down EMS, long-term debt, fire department, library, and so forth. But the vast majority of these budgets are very, very small and have very minimal impact into our tax bill. That doesn't mean we're gonna skip those departments when we get there. Sorry, you're not that lucky. But it is something to consider because obviously, when we look at the time we can best spend here in this, that we have all together here in this beautiful March weather, this is an important piece for us all to remember, I think. Okay. So these are some sort of overall arching issues that are impacting everywhere in the budget, okay? So the health insurance, we have a 9% increase in premiums. But thanks to the work of the task force that worked on benefits, that only results in we have an overall reduction of $156,340. Well, good work. 9% is still obviously well below our, is well below what the private market has. And we talked about different avenues for where we could receive health benefits, but again, status quo and those changes were what we had discussed. We also currently only have one vacancy, and last time at this year we had 9 vacancies. So again, sort of those changes were sort of outsized in last year's budget, and now we've appropriately adjusted. One other metric that came up through that conversation was a goal to have health insurance to be 30% or less of wages, and with all of these changes, we're now at 29%. I was looking for a woo-woo, thank you. Yeah, anyway, so these are the things we do. So thank you, Benefits Task Force, Walker, Megan, team. Good work by everyone. And again, that's the type of thing that would not have happened if we hadn't talked about it and made changes over the last 9 months. It works. We have a 2.8% cost of living adjustment. That's Social Security adjustment from October 1, and that's what's included here for salaries. And again, as we all know, that's not surprisingly, the overall inflation rate is 2.8%. Okay, so let's talk about department changes. I'm going to try not to get too much in the weeds here. The longer Meg and I were working on this today, the worse it got, so I'm going to try to hopefully not read everything. But again, remember, and this is why it's so important to be part of this process, I'm trying to, in this effort, to try to give you that overview and that sort of knock down maybe any big misconceptions or lack of understandings. But then, obviously, we're going to dig into each one of these as we get through those processes in the next few weeks. So don't worry if I didn't cover something you may have highlighted already or what have you. I'm certainly glad to answer questions outside of the meeting too, but I'm really trying to stay high level here. Okay? Great. So general government, which is everything from the select board, largely the town office, people who work in the town office, there's an increase of 2%. The really only major change in that area was a shift from an employee that was solely in planning and community development, and now it's half-time there and half-time in the clerk's office. Really, that's the really only real meaningful change. So if you look at the clerk's office and say, why is that up so much? That's why. Public assistance is down 86.1%. The percentage looks good. The dollar amount is, I think, around $30,000. That's the ending of agreement with Volunteers of America for additional case management support for general assistance. That was something that started a few years ago with the closure or change, I guess, in operations at the 2 hotels. That's no longer necessary. Public safety overall is down 3.6%, and our police department is down 2.4%. Obviously, there's a lot of attention on the police side of things over the last few weeks. So this budget here includes funding for our own police chief and shifts the costs that were dedicated towards Camden for part of the police chief's salary to a patrol officer position. And that helps us to reduce overtime costs, which have been really our primary driver of costs. We're also removing the lieutenant position. There's no need when you have your own standalone chief. And then there's also in the proposal for a chief's vehicle. There's a number in here. Chris has been shopping he he has a way, and I'm not gonna promise this, but I think he's gonna come back with a lower number here by the time we get to that place of the
We're
budget.
talking about Chris, the.
Chris
police-
Young.
The interim police chief.
That's right. Thank you very much.
John?
Hey, Helen.
I thought we had a police chief's vehicle, or was that before we did the sharing?
So, yeah, before the sharing, we would, yes, when Mark was, yeah. But now, the police chief's vehicle was owned by the town of Camden, and we funded a portion of that vehicle. So, okay, let's keep going. Still in public safety, fire department's down 4.1%. That's a decrease on the wages side, in terms of volunteer firefighter hours. EMS increased by 4.9%. That's a reflection of wages and reduced revenues of collections. Again, we have some revenues now, so we can have a much better real-world idea of where that is gonna land as opposed to where we did a year ago. Animal control increased 63.3%, or actually $5,000. That's a stipend for an animal control officer. We had that as part of the positions with our prior officers. We have no one who has that training presently, and so we'll need to train and hire and go through, hire within the police department for someone to take on that duty. And that will be the stipend for that. That's not an amount that's out of line with other area animal control officers, if not less.
John, we used to have Maynard take care of this.
Yes, that's right. In fact, I think we paid him around $5,000 then, at that point. Harbor is down 4.4%. We've removed funding for the Harbor Strategic Plan because that is done, and that's a one-time expense. EMA increased 24%, or $2,215. That's a stipend for the director and deputy director due to the time commitments of that job. Public Works, this is straight black and white. It's an increase of 6.2%. That's road construction is an increase of 1.7 or $16,000. Obviously, a lot of the road construction and really many of these items are dependent project by project, okay? So, as you talk about a project, if you do it, then it's gonna be this. If you don't do it, it's gonna be that. So obviously, we'll talk about what's on that paving plan and get into that in more detail. There is $70,000 in the budget for sidewalk, I would say reconstruction as opposed to construction on Russell Avenue.
You're
And
saying reconstruction because we didn't take care of it the first time?
I'm saying we haven't done it ever, I think, probably. And it's to fix up some of the areas around the sharp corner up here, along the, where it's so steep there. And then on Central Street, there's been citizen requests for a raised crosswalk to basically to improve safety of pedestrians. So those two projects total $70,000. Gravel costs are increased by 38%, 31.1%. There's 2 gravel road projects and 1 sinkhole repair. You may remember last year there was a project that I cut from last year's budget in terms of paving because of that sinkhole was too expensive. So it is now in this year's budget, but other items get removed. We have, there's culverts is up significantly, which is a $14,700 increase over last year, but we have 62 culverts we're replacing. So obviously, that doesn't happen for free. And then lastly, this budget includes the Director of Public Services engineer position that just discussed, again, dealing with this engineering wastewater concern. These costs are shared between wastewater and the municipal budget. The cost shifted $65,000 in engineering in the current budget, so that's not something we're doing again. So there's in terms of year to year, that's a hole that exists that we're putting this person into that hole. And then there's $80,000 that's coming from wastewater to offset that amount. So the idea is that its net budget impact is minimized greatly. And it really is an attempt to try to oversee not just public works, buildings and grounds, harbor, and wastewater.
John?
Yeah.
So what is the net impact then on the town budget?
The net impact on the town budget was
For that director of public-
55. I think it's 55,000 in total,
With all benefits.
with all benefits combined. And again, we haven't hired anybody. So that number is greatly speculative at this point until we've come to a landing with someone
It's
who's
getting
applying.
lower the longer we wait.
I know, we gotta find, if you know somebody, send them our way, please.
And John, when you refer to $80,000 coming from wastewater,
Yep,
you're referring to me and others on the wastewater system?
for the wastewater budget, yeah, wastewater users. Now, as you may, well, actually, no, you weren't here last year, Bill. So last year, there was, if you look to your right, your shield, or the person you were shielding perhaps, I don't remember how that was working.
Shielding.
Okay, that's what it was. So John had a, maybe I should let you two work it out. But anyway, there was a great deal of conversation about trying to remove the amount of impact of the wastewater budget in the municipal budget, right? And I think a lot of that went into that concern. The one thing about this position and the priority that the select board has indicated is that there's a real desire to have a much more, to have an exhaustive look at how we're providing wastewater services, the O&M contract, and is there a cheaper way, is there a better way for us to be able to operate in our system, our collection system? Not beyond, but just the collection system itself. And the first job of this person, whomever they may be, is to take on that project and really get down and dirty with that entire budget. So
to get
that's
out
why
from
it's so heavily, like, if that wasn't the priority bill, I wouldn't nearly have that same percentage. And I'm looking partly to John, because I know John likes to limit that percentage too. But it is, to me, that is so heavily, such an important piece. And as you said, the users it's so costly, and we've got to find a better answer to it. And unfortunately, we just lack the right staffing right now to get that job done.
Can't wait for the results.
Me too.
You said you asked the question, the impact, John or Bill, I can't remember. But so you take the wastewater out of it, the impact to the taxpayer base
Yep.
is 55?
55, yeah.
And that's leftover salary from what we're advertising for pay, so.
Yeah.
plus-
And benefits.
Plus benefits.
Right, but,
And
right.
then, trick question Clay wants to ask is, are we gonna give him a truck? Right?
No.
He or she a truck?
No,
Like,
no.
is that coming?
I've got
And
enough-
What about office and stuff, like, there's more
Right.
expenses than,
Right, so there is office space, well, there's been converted space in the Public Works building that has been, our Buildings and Grounds crew were able to work on over the last few weeks, and that space is ready for someone to move into.
didn't last year they wanted office space and they didn't?
They
get
did,
it? Okay.
yep, but
All right.
that's how it goes,
But
tough
no-
times.
No vehicles coming
No
down the line
vehicles,
or anything,
no.
like, because that's what I look at overall.
Yeah.
Like, we're in it, like,
Yeah.
another person,
Yeah.
now you
Well,
gotta.
no, it's a great question, I want to get into this because Clay wasn't really part of that. I'm gonna shield Clay now. No, he doesn't need it. The one thing we said this like last year in the budget, and I can't remember when you were on, Craig, or not, but there was a real effort by the budget committee / a member of the select board to move away from the vehicles, or to move towards vehicles and away from mileage. Talking about that list of policies, sort of that this document is, that I'm not feeling the same way from the group that I'm looking at right now, right? Which is fine, like that's, again, I'm just reacting to what you guys wanna do, so if that's where we're moving away from, that's where we're moving
But
away
in your
from.
argument, I mean, it can't be like every other year, like,
Right,
here, there.
yeah,
There's gotta be-
yeah, you want some consistency, right? But, that's where, some of that is us, we've gotta explain why, okay, well, that's why they thought it was a great idea, but truthfully it's really up to you guys to figure out is that the right way to go or not, and it was persuasive enough at that time. There is no car in here, there's no vehicle, we'll find a way with whatever we talked about trying to sell off vehicles. Well, maybe we're gonna hold on to one that's maybe a little bit rustier than we want, and that's how you get around.
Use a spare.
Use a spare, yeah, so, does that make sense, that answer?
Yeah, I just wanted, like, just ask the question, like, 55, got it, but what's coming.
Right, what else is next? I got you, yeah.
I mean, you gotta take cell phone tracking, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Even engineering software typically is pretty expensive.
Yeah, CAD and all that stuff, and you know, we already have an ESRI seat, so for our GIS, that's something we can already fit into them. You know, we haven't bought our computers yet for the year, largely because we were waiting for some stabilization on that. Nothing to do with budget, but just that was where our IT guy wanted us to be. So we're gonna buy a computer, you know, stuff like that. But we have the ability to manage those things, and they're not part of this budget. And the other thing we're trying to do is work within the budget we're living in right now, right? So if it's not in here, we're not buying it, you know, or we're buying it with what we have now. And that, just to say it right now, and just to give a shout out to our department heads, I have really leaned heavily on them, on their expense and revenue reports. They've been checking them, they're working them, they're going over them. And their discipline in terms of spending the first half of this year has been really impressive to me. I'm really impressed with what they've done. And again, they're hearing you. They're hearing what's going on. They're hearing the conversation. They don't want to anybody to be in a bad position. That's not to say they didn't recognize it before, but you know, we can all do better. And I think that's what I see from the folks that are working for me. So anyway. Is that good? Where we move on from Public Works? Back to the color, so brighten our day here. Buildings and grounds increased 1%, but there's more to that story. So this is where our changes to mowing start, okay? So we have a part of a calendar year. So again, remember our calendar year, our year here goes from July to June. So the first part of FY '27 is the last part of the contract that we're currently in with Farley, okay? So this budget is accomplishing in terms of, we have mowing contracts for the summer of '26, this summer, and then that contract ends, and then we have a startup of bringing mowing in-house that's also in this budget, and the buildings and grounds budget, and that we have labor in here for the first, 2 months or so of the mowing season, which would be effectively next spring, which would be the spring of '27. I know this is sort of like hard to figure out, but trust me, you don't want a mowing contract to end in the middle of a budget year. That it may be hard for us, but it's worse to do that. So anyway, so there's this is a bit of living in both worlds, this budget, okay?
Is that 100% mowing? Is that taking back 100% in-house?
It takes it back 100%, but the
Cemeteries.
costs aren't all in this budget because we still attribute the contracts. So
Yeah.
whatever it is in cemeteries
But the
and parks.
proposal is for our in-house crew to do all mowing?
Yeah,
100%?
exactly right.
Okay.
Yep, that's right. Okay, so this budget includes the staff for those first the last 2 months of this fiscal year, but also the first 2 months of that mowing season. So there's not a lot of labor that's in this part, but there is all of, the trimmers, the weed trimmers, the backpack blowers, the mowers, all of that is in here. So the startup effectively is in here. So the startup cost is $201,971. That's broken up into lease payments, so there's, obviously that's spread out over a number of years. And our current mowing contracts are $310. And again, those aren't all in this budget, so when we start looking at the other budgets, just know, okay, they start to look decreasing. Parks is down, cemeteries is down, but that's because the expense is rolling into buildings and grounds. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Good job. You guys are doing great. What this should do, just to put a pin on this, and then I got you, Helen. The one thing, so what we estimate is that once this is lumped in for FY '28, we should save at least $120,000 a year. Now, that's based upon the last contract that's expiring in the summer of '26. So if we were to go back out to bid, my guess is the mowing contract that we would get back, or the bids we would get back, would be higher than what we currently pay of 310, and so probably the real savings is well more than $120,000. Okay, sorry, thanks,
No,
Ellen.
No, that's okay. I haven't looked at building and grounds budget yet, but I would assume that's going to include some sort of a trailer to carry the mowers from place to
Yeah.
place and stuff like that.
Yep.
As well as the mowers and the weed whackers and the,
100%, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yep, the whole kit and caboodle.
and those will all be stored where? Public Works?
The trailer itself will be stored at Public Works.
Okay.
Yep, that's right. There was a piece of me that almost decided to take the Buildings and Grounds budget and combine it with Public Works.
We just split it out.
Well, we did, but every time I hear everyone hates how it's split out, and I'm just sort of tired of the debate about it. But I think ultimately trying to keep it on its own helps people understand where the investments are. This is our investment in our buildings, the other is our investment in our roads. And that does help people to maybe understand and weigh out the benefits of each.
And wasn't there some sort of a thought that Public Works needs another building or a lot of rehab down there?
Yes.
Are we eventually going to need another building that will have more of the buildings and grounds? So we've got sort of a nice little complex down there?
Yes, that was, you're right, we talked about that with the capital plan.
Yeah.
The cost of that is so substantial that it doesn't fit into 0.74%. But it's something that needs to be discussed,
Yeah.
and we need to get around to that idea, because it's a 40-year-old building that they're working out of now, and it's a metal building that's in a swamp that is rusting
Yes.
and sinking. So that's a problem. You gotta figure that out.
John, these buildings and grounds people you're gonna hire, these are full-time employees year-round?
So the new people, no, they're seasonal, so they'll work through the mowing season, and then they'll go where they go.
So we don't have the benefits?
We don't have the benefits, nope. Now, I don't want, again, not to get too much into detail, but I have real apprehension about hiring 4 people to do mowing, and to go down this road. That there is a operational administrative headache that, is a whole lot easier when you have a contract and say, hey, you haven't fulfilled the needs of the contract. But it's also $120,000. And so that's really what we're here for, right? What type of policy do we want? I can call up Farley today and say, hey, you guys did a terrible job weed whacking around some cemetery stones, and they'll send the crew back out to fix it. Okay, but on the other hand, $120,000 when we're trying to hold the line and keep expenses from growing, that's when we can do it, so.
So these guys would report to Glenn before?
They'd report to Glenn, yep, I mean, the current structure, I mean, I think, again, at least a year away before we're hiring people. So there's going to be, I want to give our director some time to get their feet wet. This proposal is something that Mike and Glenn both worked on. So their fingerprints are both on it, but that's where it sits right now. We ready?
And this falls under the engineer as well?
Yep.
The new hire?
Yeah, exactly, right, yeah.
And
Okay.
The 200 of startup costs, that's amortized over like 10, it's like 20 a year or something. It's not
Yeah,
all
how many
hitting
years?
management.
7?
So the only thing, the 3 items that we're leasing, or proposing a lease purchase agreement for are the mowers, because they're so expensive, the trailer, and they had requested, I think F-350 pickup truck, just something that would be easier to maneuver around town, especially. So those are the 3 items that were built into a lease agreement, and I did 5 years for those, because obviously we don't want to lease it for longer than their
Right.
projected
Yep.
useful life.
Right.
And then the things like weed whackers, backpack blowers, safety equipment, things like that are in the budget to just purchase.
Thank you.
So we're talking about an F-350 truck for 4 months of lawn mowing?
It would be used for that, and then presumably used for other things throughout the rest of the year.
By who?
Public Works staff, Buildings and Grounds staff.
I'm just saying there's a huge difference between an
Yeah.
F-350 and an F-150, that's all. And for mowing in the summertime?
That's why we're here. That's why we're here, right? And let me just say this, not to, I don't wanna get too much in the weeds here. Currently, right now, we have a contract with an individual who plows our sidewalks as it exists. Does a great job, done it for years, want him to do it as long as he possibly can do it. But he is nearing the end of the time he wants to be doing that work.
Is this David Petty?
Dave Petty, the one and the only, the best there is. And so we need to be prepared about what that means moving forward, about sidewalk cleaning, park cleaning, you know, how does that get handled? Because right now, we have enough public works employees to plow the routes that we have. We don't have excess capacity. Now, we have had some buildings and ground staff do the path out on Union Street, but that's limited. That's just that one sort of area. If we start getting into taking on that sidewalk cleaning ourselves, what does that mean? Who's doing it? It's not something that's for the faint of heart. So I would love Dave to continue doing it for as long as he wishes, but I don't know that he will.
I'm gonna train a replacement.
We would need one, yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll keep going here. Town office buildings increased by 10%. That really goes to building reserve deposit, and that really goes to some of the costs that we heard about, some of the capital issues that Helen highlighted and brought up, that we brought up as part of capital. The West Rockport Fire Station increased by 12%. That's entirely utility-based. Again, we're in our first full year there, so now we have some real-world data. And now we're sort of moving through some quicker areas here. The debt increased by 8.8%. That's the interest-only payment on the stream crossing bond. We had some changes to benefits that brought the library down 2.3. Parks is down 24.5. Mowing has a big impact on that. There's some other contracts that have been cut there. The Opera House is down 12.2. We removed the reserve deposit, and we increased some revenues in that area in the Opera House. Recreation is up 26.7%, or $20,113, and that's really pointing to a paving reserve deposit to deal with the road, that gravel road that's constantly fixed. We have conservation as an increase 4.4%. There's some water monitoring cost increases. Geez, Bill. Cemeteries is down 87.3%. Again, mowing. We also had increased lot revenue. For those who don't know, we had a new set of cemetery rules that were approved by the select board last fall. That dramatically increased lot prices, more so for non-residents than residents. Thank you. But obviously that will increase our lot revenue. The other thing that we also have removed from here is reduced capital road cost. We had some money in last year's budget to rehab some of the cemetery roads. Got a lot of that done in the fall. The roads look beautiful. I'm so happy with the work Public Works did in those. There's still some work to be done in the spring, but we won't need that same investment here in this budget. The county, now the county has come out with their budget. You may have seen the news articles, 15% overall increase. But remember, county also has costs that are part of the municipal budget. The dispatch and 911 are part of this budget. Those numbers are more than 15%. So the budget you have doesn't reflect that right now because we just got the numbers today. Megan diligently was trying for weeks and months to get a number, and they wouldn't budge, and then surprise. So we have a county budget now, and so we'll, obviously when we get to that section, we'll have to update the numbers on that.
So the legislature has done what they wanted to do for the county.
Yeah, so
'Cause we don't have a budget rep on the county.
That's right.
Budget committee.
We could use one, So, yeah, the county, there's some questions about the county. I think that probably that might be a conversation of a different flavor for us than it usually is, because county tax is something, we have to pay regardless. In fact, we have to pay the county tax before we pay even municipal costs, by law. But you know, there's how the county is operating differently than it has in recent years. And so that's certainly, our relationship fiscally with the county is very different than it had been. And so we need to be diligent about those needs, and a county budget committee member is important more than ever.
John, who do we have now representing Rockport on the?
On the commission?
Yep.
So Mark Ratner represents Rockport.
Okay. He replaced,
He replaced Sharon Pullman. Yeah, so Sharon lives up the street here. But the nonsense about the county budget committee, we do need somebody to fill that seat, so.
that's what I was asking.
Oh, okay, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so we don't have anybody for that
Doug,
right
no
now.
one replaced Doug at this point.
There's no, yeah, because they didn't even get to a
There hasn't been
point.
a county budget process until today, really.
Yeah, so it's sort of like now we gotta start over, but
Not to discuss this tonight, but we're paying more taxes than Rockland for the county,
absolutely.
which,
And I don't know if anybody's been following what's happening with Camden now using the sheriff has now volunteered his taxpayer-funded time to be the interim police chief in Camden.
so we're playing for Camden's police chief now. Yeah.
So yeah, there's some balance issues and some conversations and, you know, anyway, do with that what you will.
John, on this worksheet that Megan gave us, you
Yep.
mentioned 15%. What am I missing?
Well, you know, I don't have it. You have it?
What, yeah.
Go ahead.
What, I haven't heard this directly from the county. What I gathered from the article I read today was that 911 and dispatch fees are going up 40%. In this budget, we allocated a 10% increase, so that's substantially more than what's in the budget currently. They do still have their entire process that they need to go through, so I'm hoping by the time we get to the end of March and we've kind of gone through the municipal budget process, the county will have a better idea in terms of where those fees are gonna land.
So right now, in the 0.74% increased budget, we have a assumption of 10% increase, but we already know it's going to be well above that.
From what was posted today.
Today we
Like
do.
I said, I have not gotten that directly from the county, so
Okay. So we might lose our 0.74 based on that.
unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
But that's not something we can control,
No,
other
no.
than if we can get someone on the budget.
We'll find some other places, John.
Yeah, actually, not to bog down in this, but since we're on it,
Yeah.
right now, what is the county, well, it doesn't make any difference anyway, because the municipal budget's not, it's just the 911 is part of the
911 and
municipal budget?
dispatch fees.
So
We
those will
wear
go up.
those.
So we did those at 10% in the municipal
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
They're gonna go
Yeah.
up 40%, but what is the actual cost for that we get? It says here, 178,000?
Yeah, 178,491.
So if that goes up another
Yeah, so if you increase that by 40.
30%,
Well, it's just a portion of that, so this current year, our 911 fees are $85,513. Our dispatch fees are $42,130. So if you combine those two together and then multiply by 40%.
This could be right. This could be right, the 127 here to 178. That jives, that works. The 25 and 26, this might be correct, now that I'm looking at it. I hadn't seen this.
So we did 10% on 127.
Yeah.
And we should have done, it turns out,
40.
40%.
Yeah,
Well, but that's not a done deal. I mean,
No, but I'm
No.
just trying to ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when
How
you say
much the
should've.
impact it'll be.
It's about 40 grand plus, 35 to 40.
but if you
Okay.
were, you know, so if you add 40, so you're still, you're over 1%, but you'd be at like 1.5, 1.4, something like that.
Yeah, so,
And it's just not something we can control.
And
No, I
looking
get it.
down through this, they even have their dispatch, the PSAP is the 911 fees at 40% increase.
okay, thanks.
Looking at, don't we have I'm sure I'm missing something, but we have 2.1 million for county fees.
So the assessment is separate from the fees.
Okay.
So the assessment pays for things like the airport, their operations, the courthouse,
Oh, I see.
district attorney's office, things like that. The dispatch and the 911 fees are separate because they're optional to municipalities. So a municipality could decide to have their own dispatch center instead of going with the county. So they assess those fees separately based on the municipality's enrollment.
So,
But this Knox County, just trying to map what's in
Yeah.
this sheet to this.
Yeah.
The 1.899 should be the total county fees, including the 911, or is there?
No, so the assessment itself, they have in here as 1.72. In the budget, which obviously we produced before that, we had 1.9, because the original budget they issued had a 22% increase, which since then, they have obviously reduced. And then we did our best estimate on the 911 and dispatch fees, and obviously that was wrong. So the assessment will go down, but that doesn't impact the net municipal budget. The only thing that impacts the net municipal budget are those two smaller amounts.
Got it.
I mean, Frank, it's hard to believe that we're at a day where we're thankful that the county tax is only, or the overall county budget is only going up 12.45%. But that's really where we are in terms of the net impact to all of us. But obviously a 40% increase in the dispatch is pretty hard to accept. Yeah, it's part of, and what was, for those who haven't read the article, a lot of it is driven by the fact that they had to increase their costs and hire staff and to really keep the dispatch center open, and we're grateful for that. That's wonderful. Probably there's a better way to have gotten there than they did, but here we are. Okay, so again, we'll talk more about county, and then the special assessments. Bill brought that question up. We've reduced the amount of unassigned fund balance from 420 down to 320,000. That's really a reflection of cash flow, and a reflection of, what we expect through our, the overlay and abatements, to sort of shake out. And we also expect our state revenue sharing to increase. So, we do have costs going up, obviously. I mean, it's a big budget. There's a lot of places that will happen, and it can't go up. We can't limit it everywhere. But we're gonna be much closer to 1% than I ever would have thought, honestly. Even a year ago when I said we'll bend the curve, I did not think that we would even be having this conversation tonight. So, thank you for all of the efforts that have gone into this. This is, again, it's staff that's watching, it's, Megan, it's all of you who help us to sort of get to this place. And now, but now the work begins. That's the thing, right? It's now the process starts, and you are in the driver's seat of where that process ends. Let me just, and I'll just say this, for those of you who are new or what have you, every single one of you has a voice in this process. Every single one of you has the ability to make change. It might be, hey, I'm the only one who feels this way, but that might be the thing that causes us to go back and say, well, why don't we go do this next year? That's how it works. I've done this 20 times. That's how it works. And maybe it doesn't change the document that goes before the voters, or that everyone gets finalized, but that's how the momentum of this thing happens, and that's how real change happens. It's not because I don't want to change it, it's because it takes a lot of work to get us as a town to maybe take a good idea and turn it into reality. So, it's a big job you guys have before you. I don't envy anybody who goes through this, but I think if we all have the right attitudes here of trying to work together and really have the same goal in mind, which is the best budget for the town of Rockport we possibly can, I think we can be really successful. And how the votes go, that's your world. That's not my world. I'm here to answer questions about how money gets spent, how it works. That's where I begin and end. But I, certainly glad to answer questions. You know, one thing I just want to say, if there's things that aren't understood, you gotta give us, please give us a chance to be able to say, hey, I don't have that answer, but I gotta go back, you know? It's not gonna be, we have everything, up here. There's a lot of information in here. There's some information in here, but really, we're working together on this. And it really takes all, 16 of us that are a part of this thing to make it go. And so, I don't want to get into the thing about letters or whatever, but to me, like, for this group, we need to work together the next month, and there's gonna be disagreements, there's gonna be difference of opinion, and that's okay, that's what this is about. But it's really about trying to work together for everybody, and, I have a lot of confidence we're gonna have a real successful time. I think I've given you something you can work with, and there's a lot of information in here, and, I wish you luck. See ya, no. But I wish you luck, thank you very much. So, that's all I have. I know there's, you probably, I don't know if you have, keep going and vote.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Yeah, appreciate your time, showing up, give you a high-level view of the budget. I think, like everyone said, we still just need to be able to work together, and whether or not we have opinions that are the same or different, we need to be able to communicate. That will, I think, probably be what is the biggest contributing factor to how much work we can get done in the meeting. So let's at least make sure that everyone on every seat at the table here can communicate, look each other in the eye, and use some strong words and get along.
And let me just talk in process for a quick sec, Clay. So we're gonna have the 4 meetings we go through department by department. That's the opportunity department head will be here. I mean, I'll obviously answer a lot of questions, but department heads are here to talk about the department. That's really a good opportunity to really get into some detail about how do these things really work and use that opportunity. After those 4 meetings, the budget committee will meet and provide a series of recommendations to the select board. And what would be incredibly helpful as we go through those department meetings is flagging the areas that you want to get to. Having seen this time after time, sometimes the recall, when you've been through 4 nights of these meetings, and then the 5th night, 2 weeks later, what did we say about what so-and-so said about the thing, about the other thing? And it can get lost. So the more that maybe even in the middle of those meetings where we're going through with the department head, that those ideas are flagged or whatever that might be, that will be helpful for everybody. And I say that for the budget committee and the select board. If there are particular areas that are bing, 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 we want to talk about this, and this is how I feel. Also, if there's areas of consensus, and those who've been around this know, hey, oh yeah, that should have been 1,500, not 2,000. Oh yeah, does anyone agree with that? Sounds great. Boom, we make the change right then and there. There's no need to have a vote and a second vote, and let's do it. Let's make the change. Let's make this thing work. Megan's gonna have the spreadsheet going. We can do the changes in live time, best we can. So that will allow us to keep sort of focused. So again, 4 nights, more we can identify, the better. If there's areas of consensus, identify them. So the budget committee meets, provides areas of recommendations of changes potentially to the select board. Then the select board will meet after that. They'll finalize a budget and say, this is our budget, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're putting before the voters. Then the budget committee will meet again, and they'll say, we like it, we don't like it. And then the budget that got approved in that select board meeting, the recommendation, all ends up on the warrant that the select board will consider at their meeting in April. Then, this is important because this came up, we talked about this a little bit at the last budget meeting. There is the next select board meeting, there always has been, anything that's on the secret ballot, there is a public comment, there is a public hearing that's held. That's the time to debate, discuss everything that's on the warrant, including the budget. including especially the budget. And that really has been rarely used over the years, but it's there and it's meant to be there. So that's a great opportunity for anyone to voice, their concerns, residents. There'll be a mic ready for all that.
Yeah, ask questions, get clarification on
Absolutely.
budget questions people have.
Yep.
I don't see a time for that.
On that meeting, the public hearing.
Meeting, yeah.
It would if it's the select board meeting, if it does line up, it would be the 6 o'clock, but
Yeah,
we missed
it'd be at 6
we
o'clock.
missed the 6 PM tonight too, so thank you, Helen, on that one too.
So John, I
Appreciate you.
assume that all of your department heads have bought in on your budget proposal?
Yeah.
$400,000
They bet-
difference between what they want and what you want, that's what I'm asking.
They better, yeah, no.
I mean, we don't
No,
have to
they
worry
do.
about- Okay.
Yeah, no, they all know that those changes have been made. In fact, Buildings and Grounds is really the big delta on that. And the change was really having to do with how we're going to pursue some of the bigger ticket fixes to this building. And that's a separate conversation that I think we all have to have. And again, I don't have enough information yet to really have that conversation with you all. But having that conversation will be, it's not something that's fit for this budget right now. So, and Glenn, our public Buildings and Grounds supervisor, he understood that. So, again, they propose and I, take it from there and usually
But
there's.
you discuss it with them. It's not,
Absolutely.
you don't do that unilaterally. so
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt.
For some of these meetings coming up, I'm assuming, that we had to get times that work for most everybody, but not everyone can make it to every meeting. Is there gonna be a remote option for these meetings?
Yeah, there can be, absolutely. I think the better we know that, if there are particular individuals, I think, are you headed away, Bill?
I am, I'm hoping I'll be able to
Yeah.
participate online, or is
Okay.
that possible?
Yeah, I think so. I
Like
think
last
so.
time I flew back to Rockport for the vote, I probably gonna do it this year, that's all.
Okay. Well, if
When are
there's
you-
others though,
When are you gone, Bill?
Mid-March, mid-April, so about the 18th. I'm gonna be the first group of these meetings. I won't get to the one with the fire chief. And
So you'll be here on
So
the
the
11th and
18th.
16th.
we'll have you on the screen though.
I hope not.
Okay.
Speaking of which, for these meetings, meeting dates, are those on the town website so that the general public can see when
Good question.
these meetings
They are.
are?
They are
Because
now.
that,
It
okay,
popped up today.
okay,
Yeah, front screen.
okay,
I didn't check the calendar, but they're on the front screen.
okay.
Yeah.
So anyone
Just make
who's
sure.
curious from the public that wants to come to these meetings, they are public.
Absolutely.
And if you have questions, especially specifically with department heads, or departments, I should say, then please show up,
Is there-
or get in
Is
touch
there
with.
public comment on the 4 meetings?
No,
Not, it's not set up that way.
later, once,
Because
So they can come and
they can
spectate.
watch and see,
Then at least
What's going on?
communicate with members from the budget committee.
yeah.
Yeah, actually, thanks for bringing that in, Clay. I've heard from a number of residents what their concerns are with the draft budget, and what I usually do is I say, great, thanks for that input, I'll bring it to the meeting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that,
And any of us who hear
if
from
anybody
folks.
in the public has a concern, that's why the select board is here, that's why the members of the budget committee are here. That's their communication vehicle, because we can't have anybody and everybody walking in the middle of a formal meeting that we're gonna cover a lot of ground and it just
But
gets.
their time would be, like John was saying, on the October,
Yeah,
Yeah, the
Yeah,
April.
Yeah.
after everything's all voted on.
but in the meantime, in the lead up,
Send it.
there's no problem, contacting anybody in the room and bring it in saying, somebody asked this question, I've got a bunch of my thoughts peppered with them and what we're gonna talk about.
That's great.
Jeff?
Quick question about how everybody feels about the physicality of this room. When we have department chair people, we'll probably have, where Walker's sitting, we'll probably have, get out of there! Chair department heads. But it will probably pull this a little bit this way and have more seats for people to come to it, but this is what it is. We'll have to figure out a monitor for your position from there, but anybody have any complaints about the way the room's laid out right now?
Walker, can you see that screen over there?
I can see
behind
both.
you? Okay.
Cool. You just saved me asking for donation.
For a budget increase?
Can
Sorry.
we get a sense from folks of who can or can't come to these various meetings, just to, unless they've already let you know, Megan?
No, and if you let me know, then I can get you the link ahead of time
I'll
for
let you know.
the remote meetings. Well, for the remote access.
Do the meeting dates otherwise work for everyone else?
Yes.
Okay. I think the other thing we were, each night we'll have the department heads and we'll go through each department. And what we're really hoping, because we've seen this happen, is people will really speak up in terms of not speaking loud, but just make sure you let us know what your concerns are in that department. If there are changes you're thinking that we should make to those department budgets, it's really ideal if you're making those comments then, because there's no other time when we're as deeply in-depth on each department. It gets really you think you're gonna remember it all, and then, 3 weeks, 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, there was something about that department we wanted to do, and nobody can quite remember it. So if we can be really disciplined to, as we conclude each department, have a really good idea of whether it's an up, we like what's happening in this department, or there's I'm concerned about some of the costs here, all of that. The more we can sort of keep that going, rather than saying, oh, well, we'll figure that out in another couple weeks, because it's really hard to get back to that. So we'll try to remember to.
And will we be covering by the department, like new, like outside the box purchases with the department heads here? Or, like I was noticing like capital improvement plan, it's on the back side of it, so you kind of have to trail it back. Will those items be brought forefront on that conversation within that department? So say,
Well, it
there's
seems
no
like they
trucks, but say there was a truck being purchased, it would be brought up in that budget?
Oh, yeah.
Typically,
Yeah, so when you use that section for capital items.
Just to
Right.
just have it
Yeah.
crystal clear, like Public Works is going to buy X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z.
Right.
Yeah, that's
It may
right.
not be an outright purchase, but it's a new payment for us.
Yeah, right.
Stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that would definitely be, that's the time, absolutely, to talk about that.
in
Yeah.
the document too, we separate them, so like Public Works specifically, there is a total for their lease payments, but under it, it shows like what the payments are going towards. So if there isn't anything in this current year's budget, then it's a new item.
So if I see like a 1, that's proposed for this year's budget to buy this year.
Yeah, you would
Okay.
see that separately listed there.
Could you also outline that the cause and effect of yes, there's the purchases, but there's also the reserve also needs to be funded as well.
Yeah, so like
Just,
some departments, like the fire department, there is no new equipment in there, but they have a reserve account that directly offsets any of their lease payments, so it's a net zero impact to the budget. The same thing with the police department, not quite to a net zero effect, but there is an offsetting revenue. So when we get to those like purchases, if there is like money that's being used from a reserve account or something to offset either a portion or all of that purchase, then we'll bring that up at that time too.
And just to jump on that, I think I mentioned during the capital, or after the capital, the replacement schedules have been updated to push out some of those vehicles out, as was discussed sort of in that meeting. So that also plays in a part of what the reserve requires is to ensure to meet those schedules as well. So there's also it's not a direct, for example, I'm gonna cut the excavators and it's $50,000, well, now it's $50,000 cut out of the budget. Not necessarily, so it doesn't necessarily work the way you want it to, because you wanna find savings, but in the aggregate, it will find the savings, right? It's just over a longer longer
Are
run.
those changes you made in the books that you gave us in the
They're
capital?
in the department budget,
And this-
they were not changed in the capital improvement
Right.
plan because that was already issued.
Right.
So the old ones are in the capital improvement plan, and then wherever that department is within the budget document,
Okay.
their new vehicle replacement schedule is with it.
Let's see. I think that's about it that I have. If you have questions, again, I'm glad to sort of go through those things. It's, obviously there's a lot in here, but, I think hopefully there's enough information backing support. If there isn't, we'll bring it and we can talk about it that night and find a better way to represent it. But, I'm grateful for all the support we've had to get to this point, and now we go to work. So, looking forward to it. Thank you all.
Great, thanks, everyone. Jeff, do you want to?
No, I have questions outside of that.
Okay.
See you all next week.
Jeff, are we
Yeah.
off the mic?